Hi everyone.
Hello again. When we started our Revelation playlist, which now has several dozen videos on it, we started with a overview of the Watchtower's literature on the subject. We've recently started an Ezekiel playlist and want to do the same here. So this is kind of an intro to what the Watchtower has done with Ezekiel over the last 104 years since the finished mystery. So in 1917 they gave 200 of the 600 pages of the finished mystery to the subject of Ezekiel. But by 1931-32 they've discovered they needed to replace it. At least J F Rutherford had. So what Mr. Rutherford did was publish 3 whole volumes from 1931 to 32 on the subject of Ezekiel, bits and pieces added. And the title is Vindication. By this time, Rutherford had started titling all his books with one word. So we'll look at least at what Vindication has in the way of new doctrine, because after all, why would you replace your book 3 times in 100 years unless there's things that you are now embarrassed about that you're no longer taught?
Or changed.
So they replaced those books 40 years later with this book, which most of us are familiar with. The nation shall know that I am Jehovah. How? And apparently went another, let's see now, 40 plus years until they felt the need to replace this one with the book they're currently studying, which is entitled Pure Worship Restored at Last.
Yes.
So we wanted to look more closely at those changes that have caused them to have to replace these books over the decades. I think the obvious reason to replace the finished mystery is the extravagant claims made for C.T. Russell in that book. After all, he just died, so naturally there's tributes, but when you actually read the book, which Vivian and I have both said led us out of the Watchtower, realize this is not just tribute to C.T. Russell, this is actually worship of C.T. Russell.
He's called the Watchman, the Voice of Jehovah, the Modern Ezekiel, and the Man with the Writer's Inkhorn, marking the saved people with a cross.
Marking the saved people with a cross.
Well,
so,
you know why they wanted to change that one.
Yeah, so in 1931, of course, the cross was gone. So, of course, they felt the need to get rid of this faithful and discreet slave. Of course, that's another title of Russell. They add all that stuff to the assumption that he is the unique voice of Jehovah. The Laodicea messenger of Revelation as well. All of those titles given to a man. So the modern narrative about that part of their history, when Rutherford was, well, they don't even say Rutherford anymore, do they? They say the organization
of that time.
The faithful slave was cleaning out creature worship.
Yeah.
Which has some truth to it, because after all it was creature worship, but it was the Watchtower itself that promoted that creature worship. But when you look at Rutherford's replacements for the finished mystery, you realize creature worship wasn't eradicated. It's transferred.
Yeah, shifted to another person.
Yeah. So here's the 3 volumes of Vindication. We're just going to read the ads at the back to give you a taste of what they're now promoting. Needs to be said though that the real effort behind these 1,000 pages of material is to replace the worship of Russell by the worship of an organization. This was one insistence, one emphasis that, of course, Rutherford was very big on right through the late 20s and into the 30s, that there was now one organization that God was using. This is something Russell never taught. So when you look at the first volume, you get a taste of what was now being promoted. This is an ad at the back of the book.
So it starts by saying, not because the trend of prices throughout the world is downward, not because the people have to cut expenses, but because the great teacher said, freely ye have received, freely give. He also said, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness, and then shall the end come. That is why all 9 books can be had for only $2.25. And then it has the titles listed: The Harp of God, Deliverance, Creation, Reconciliation, Government, Life, Prophecy, and Light, 2 books. In these books, the unsuspected wealth of the Bible has been dug up for you. Nuggets of divine truth hidden from ages and generations, now revealed for your understanding. This entire this entire set, all cloth bound, will be mailed to you at any address, postpaid, upon receipt of $2.25.
Before you flip over, notice what book is missing here. 2 books are missing, actually, when you look at the list of titles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, the Finished Mystery is missing. This is the replacement.
Yeah.
But look what's also missing. Millions Now Living Will Never Die.
Mm-hmm.
And Comfort for the Jews, 1925.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these were books he wrote as well.
So it goes on.
Yeah, and I mean, it headed it up as the set of Rutherford's writings.
Yeah.
Then it goes on the next page to say, and so he took the dollar and bought. And then he highlights these 3 of his books. Well, 4 actually, because one's 2 set. Prophecy, the book Prophecy, the book Light, 2 books, and Life. And then it says, of course you don't believe in clairvoyance, horoscopes, palmistry, laying the cards, or spiritism. Of course you no longer believe in the preachers and priests of Christendom as having any light on the future. But the Bible made plain, that's different. Are you living in this strange day and yet don't know what it's all about? Are you worried about the world's future? Then read Judge Rutherford's book, Prophecy. Have you an idea you've been kept in the dark long enough? Here's what you want: Light, 2 books. It will be a revelation to you, and it deals with every verse and chapter of the last great Bible prophecy, Revelation. And when you've read the above, you'll not want to miss Life, the book Life. It explains what the great life giver has done and is now about to do to abolish death and to give you life, not up in heaven, but on earth, made perfect. All 4 books are written by the world's foremost Bible scholar, Judge Rutherford. Boy, that almost made me choke when I read that. And then you just have to mail to receive them.
$2.25.
Yeah.
So is it clear who you should listen to in 1931-32?
Well, these ones are $1. These 3. 4.
Who should you listen to? Don't listen to the occultists, that's clear. Don't listen to Christendom, that's clear in the same paragraph.
Yeah.
And by the way, Russell's already gone, so don't listen to Russell.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to the world's foremost Bible scholar. I couldn't believe that when I read it either. But let's not forget, although you could say, well, 1917 Finished Mystery was a tribute to the lately deceased Pastor Russell. Russell was no longer alive. He wasn't managing what went into the Finished Mystery, although they said he was.
But he's around when
Rutherford
this
is
written.
alive when this is written.
So he knows what's being, if he didn't write it himself, he let it be published that he's the world's foremost Bible scholar.
Here's Volume 2, the ad at the back of Volume 2 of Vindication.
Okay. This ad says, in 12 of the greatest books ever written, Judge Rutherford points out explicitly, conclusively, logically, and scripturally the course of human family from the first pair down to the time when the whole earth shall be under one righteous government, and when all people shall enjoy perfect health, prosperity, happiness, and never-ending life on the earth. So remember, these are the 12 greatest books ever
12
written.
of the greatest, not
12 of the
greatest.
greatest books ever written. Still doesn't do it for me.
The interesting thing is that they were out of print shortly after Rutherford died,
Yeah.
about a decade later. So that's
some other great books.
That's his booklets, right? No, that's his books. It's still another list of his books with a synopsis of each.
Yep.
And here's volume 3 of Vindication.
Okay.
How important is it that you read and be acquainted with Rutherford's books and booklets?
For busy people, we have made a selection of more than 75 of Judge Rutherford's concise, straight-to-the-point explanations of the most perplexing problems in the Bible, and have arranged them in 13 attractively bound booklets. Each treatise, is that how you say it?
Treatise.
How you say it?
Treatise.
Treatise. Can be read in just 15 minutes, and more genuine satisfaction and profitable pleasure derived therefrom in that length of time than can be gotten from studying the Bible by yourself in a whole year.
One is tempted to say the gall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd get more profit from reading these little booklets, 13 little booklets, than from reading the Bible and studying it for yourself. And I think they still think this. They certainly thought it in with the 6 volumes of Russell. They said you couldn't understand the Bible without them.
So, as with Russell's books, which had already been out of print for a number of years when he writes this, now Rutherford's books were going to go out of print, and his booklets are no longer published by the Society. They're an embarrassment to the Society. So, is it true, the present narrative, that Rutherford, well, the organization, got rid of the cult that was building around a man?
No, they've just transferred it to a different man.
Different man, yeah. And then when they replaced all of Rutherford's writings with the finished mystery, the Nation Shall Know That I Am Jehovah book, with the question how at the end. I know that this was a turning point for you too when you actually thought about this, because you had studied this book
a few times, I think.
A few times when you were a young Jehovah's Witness.
But I think one thing that we should point out is that the teachings, the main doctrines of Rutherford are the ones that have stuck now.
Yes, they have.
They still have a lot of their prime doctrines, which is the vindication of God by the use of His name, and Paradise Earth as your hope.
These are not Russell doctrines. They're Rutherford doctrines. So it's true that his books and his booklets are gone. But this book embodies his principal teaching, namely that the vindication of Jehovah's name is the most important, even more important than Paradise Earth, which is also his innovation, right?
Yeah. So with this book, they're basically saying that it's through our preaching work that God is vindicated.
Yeah.
By proclaiming His name and talking about Paradise Earth, the kingdom.
Yeah.
So that's still the scenario for now.
Yeah.
And I remember when we had left the witnesses, and I was trying to make sense of like the Paradise Scriptures, and so I was looking up Ezekiel and thinking, okay, well, now I'd read Ezekiel for the first time, like read right through, and I found, hey, there's an answer to that question, how? Right in the book.
Yeah.
In the book of Ezekiel. But it's not the answer we're told when we're witnesses.
Indeed not.
That it has something to do with what we're doing. That's how people will know about Jehovah. No, there's a different answer in the latter chapters of Ezekiel. And so I thought, well, what did they say about that? So I got this book out because I remembered that I had studied that, and they leave out whole passages of Ezekiel, whole chapters are missing from explanation in this book. So when you're at a book study, you're not sitting there following along with your Bible open and reading what the text says too. So we don't seem to notice.
You don't notice at all.
That they miss whole sections of it.
And
I always relied on the book to explain things, not the Bible.
And much of what they miss out is the latter part of the book of Ezekiel. The last half of it is skimmed over rather hastily. Much of the book, as with the other books before, is on the parts they can appropriate for use against Christendom.
Yeah.
The parts about unfaithful Israel and Jerusalem, etc. So
And
the
to
parts
promote
about
themselves.
God's solution, God's solution to these problems that he was having with Israel is skimmed over rather superficially. So we want to put in a link to one of the videos. We've only got a few videos, about 8 I think, in the Ezekiel playlist right now, but at least 2 or 3 of them are on the subject of what the finished mystery has about Russell, the praise of Russell. So check out the playlist, and one of the videos in the playlist is actually an examination of one of the chapters that Vivian's talking about that we would have skimmed right over.
Chapter 36.
Chapter 36, and that's in your playlist, Paradise Lost, where we look at all the texts that actually do offer God's scenario, God's eschatology, God's kingdom scenario of the future. So we'll put that playlist in, as well as that specific video from the Paradise Lost playlist, which gives at least a sampling of the kind of text and the kind of promises that we were missing, because that chapter 36, tells you why Israel was cast off, as it were, at least temporarily, in exile. They shamed Jehovah's name.
Yeah.
And the solution to that is not abandoning Israel and his promises to them, but rather regathering them.
And
so
it's
we go into that in the video.
He vindicates his own name.
Yeah, he's more than
by
capable
his behavior,
of vindicating.
by his faithfulness. Yeah.
He's vindicating his reputation, but he's vindicating the meaning of his name, which is a covenant name. He seems to have set apart for his relationship with Israel. So that video on Ezekiel 36, and also the playlist, which contains the videos about their treatment of Russell in the finished mystery. See you next time.